Hello and welcome back to YellowCard Vanguard. We've got a pretty chunky video here for you today. But before we begin, I'd like to make a positive announcement. Myself as a player, and by extension YellowCard Vanguard as a channel, has finalised its sponsorship with Strictly Broken TCG, and we now have an exclusive discount code for YellowCard viewers. The Strictly Broken TCG site is still undergoing updates, but very soon you'll be able to use the code SBTCGYellowCard, all one word, for a discount on playsets and playset pre-orders on upcoming Vanguard sets starting with VBT09 onwards. Sadly, this doesn't apply to singles or Weiss or Buddy Fight, only on Vanguard playsets, but a discount is a discount. So thank you very much to Strictly Broken TCG, and now on with the video. So today's video has been a few days coming. For those of you who watch the weekly streams, which you can catch on Twitch, you'll know what this is about. For those who don't, you're in for a ride. So an earlier iteration of this video was recorded on Sunday the 6th of September. It's currently Thursday the 10th of September, and since then we've had a few updates which I will mention, but the core idea and the feeling behind the video remains the same. This is a video calling out Bushiroad as a company, and to a lesser extent the Vanguard player base. But let's talk about Bushiroad first. We've had nothing but problems this year. Starting with Riviere, and with the only exception being Astral Force, this year has been some of the most egregious power creep we've ever seen. Riviere itself wasn't inherently problematic. We've had, big shifts and rises in power levels of standard before. But one of the huge criticisms at the end of G era was that from GBT 13 onwards, we went into a Ferris wheel meta, where every set that came out released a new meta-changing deck or multiple decks. And this year has been the same problem, but on a worse scale. So early in the year, we had the Riviere set come out just before the new year in Japan, and Riviere became great. And then a little bit later on, we had VB12, Team Dragon's Vanity. That was also very, very good. It didn't completely dethrone Riviere as the deck to beat in the format, but the fact that we had to have restrictions to Narukami and Riviere because they were being too dominant, while, nothing else from before was even, making waves, I think that was a really concerning factor. Now, that in and of itself isn't a huge problem, but it looks much worse in context. I'm just mentioning this as a sort of pretext as to sort of the issues as a whole. So I want to make it clear, I have nothing against slight power creep. If anything, I think it's a necessary in order to push the sales in a non-rotating card game. So I'm completely okay with Bushiroad doing that. You need to introduce something new and exciting that people actually want to buy. But the scale of power creep is what the issue is. Astral Force did not push the power level of standard at all, despite adding good cards to the game, and as a result, it sold pretty badly. Now, I believe that this, combined with the fact that people were upset that the Bermuda Triangle was, again, great after their second wave support, thus being the only clan to be good every single time they got support, is part of what caused the VBT08 Dark Age. So let's talk about the VBT08 Dark Age. The last 3 set releases have widely been agreed by competitive players to be one of the worst gameplay environments in Vanguard history. The Cross and Messiah didn't just power creep the game, they did so on an almost unprecedented scale, even more so than Phantasmal. And then VBT09 had a very similar impact, with Night Rose and Shahar becoming the new best decks in the format, surpassing the Cross and Messiah. And then VBT10 and Luard happened. I shouldn't need to explain Luard, right? But I do want to talk about the Luard a little bit. I want to talk about the restriction list we got on Tuesday. That restriction list that Bushiroad implemented was fucking stupid. But that's a discussion for another time, so I'm not going to go on about the ban list itself, the restriction. My complaint is that we never should have gotten to this point in the first place. There shouldn't have been a ban list or a restriction list issued, because this was not a problem that should have existed to begin with. Here's the thing, it's no secret that Bushiroad has no dedicated playtest team. That much is obvious, right? All of their testing is done by the people that design the cards, their internal employees that actually work, on the rest of the product. That should be fine, because, there's quite a few people there, and they do play enough of the games that, they spot stuff that's very easily, clearly broken. But I'm concerned that they didn't even do a remotely thorough job of testing VBT10. I'm willing to believe that they didn't properly test the superior ride engine in Luard. But I refuse to believe that they didn't anticipate it being a thing that people were going to try this. You only have, 10, maybe 20 people at most in Bushiroad R&D developing these cards and, testing them against each other? And then you compare that to hundreds of thousands of players on social media, in card shops in Japan, whatever, who know the entire set list off by heart and who know entire clans' card pools off by heart. There's no way that those 20 people are going to catch absolutely everything. Fair enough to Bushiroad. As of this morning, they've announced that they're hiring part-time people to help test the new sets, test zero, and play test and catch these errors. So hopefully we won't see any more errors like these again. But the fact that it took until now, it took until Luard, which almost broke the game, for them to be willing to hire playtesters again after the Chaos Breaker fiasco many years ago. That's just embarrassing. Like, come on. You're really going to be that stubborn that you don't want to hire playtesters because you're worried about leaks? That's another discussion again that I don't want to go down. But that's the problem here. But my concern is that the fact that they wasn't properly tested is what makes Luard such a huge transgression in my eyes. You don't have to be a good player to know that Superior Ride PBD Luard was going to be strong naturally by having crit to the board on turn 3. Like, if you read Drag Driver on its own, that was clearly meant to be a turn 4 card. So the fact that it wasn't tested, or wasn't tested properly, is already a huge concern, regardless of whether or not it was intentional design. I don't want to go on about Luard for too long, because we have a lot of other stuff to get through, but, it was an emergency ban list. And for anyone who plays card games, you'll know that emergency ban lists are never good. Usually you wait for lots and lots of data across lots of different things. Whereas here, we've had 2 weeks, 1 or 2 major tournaments, and sure, the numbers were very concerning in those major tournaments, but the fact that the numbers were that concerning to begin with to force it is kind of concerning, right? And let's not mention, this is the second emergency ban list that Bushiroad has put out this year. But let's talk about the other one, right? Premium. Rewind to the start of the year. Worlds format. I think that Premium was actually in a pretty decent place at the time. You had 3 best decks, being Ezel, Katrina, and DI, and they were all relatively good against each other. So those top 3 were well balanced. Sure, anything outside of those top 3 was almost unplayable, so I agree that the meta did have to change in some way, shape, or form. But here's where the problem starts, right? DI is hugely unpopular, even more so in Japan. DI has an almost 0% play rate in Japan. For a deck that's so good in both Premium and Standard, for that matter, and it has less than 10% of play rate, it's just really unpopular, even though being really good. In my opinion, DI was actually probably better than Ezel and Katrina at the time, so it was probably the best deck out of those 3. But despite that, Bushiroad's paradigm when it comes to balancing things isn't about raw deck power, it's about usage. Which means that if a deck is heads and shoulders above the rest, but nobody's playing it, there's no reason to hit it. If a deck is being played by everybody, even if it's not actually that good, it gets hit. Now this is also an absolutely god-awful point in and of itself, but I don't want to get sidetracked. We have a lot to get through. But that's the setting for Premium that I've painted for you now. So despite DI being really good, and the most susceptible to being broken later down the line because of how Gasteel is designed, there's just, I'm going on this slight tangent, but Gasteel existing means that every single grade 3 that Bushiroad prints from now on has to be very careful. Like, Charlotte already with Gasteel is insane, and I don't doubt that they can easily print something again a year or 2 down the line that's going to break Gasteel once again. But anyway, Bushiroad doesn't see DI as a problem, because no one's playing it. They only see Katrina and Ezel, and so Katrina and Ezel get touched by the ban list. And when you have these 3 best decks that are all slightly, about the same level of strength, and 2 of them go away, that leaves 1 deck as the best deck in the format. And sure, DI had 1 or 2 questionable matchups, and those matchups had struggled into Ezel and Katrina, but Ezel and Katrina going away didn't make DI's counters any better. So DI remained the best deck in the format. Now this is the first mistake they made, because either Gasteel or NLK needed to die. In fact, even to this day, DI still needs to die somehow. But throughout that 1.5, almost 2 month time frame, Premium was almost unplayable, because you just played DI or you lost. It took until Premium Collection 2 to change that. But speaking of Premium Collection 2, oh boy! Anybody who watches this channel, or even keeps up with Vanguard at all, will know about one tiny blue fuck that came very close to making the collective player base quit Premium. Of course, they did take action thanks to the voice of the collective community and people making a hubbub on social media, but they restricted it to 1 instead of an outright ban. and Song Saloop is still running around, as is a variety of other degenerate vanilla decks. So they didn't even fix the problem properly. Like, the problem is smaller, but it still exists. And in that vein, let's have a quick sidetrack to talk about a very similar standard ban list, Angerblader. Now, I won't deny that that deck was problematic, because it was uninteractive, and it was very, very good. But Angerblader was not the problem, Sweeper Acrocanto was the offender. Angerblader was just the enabler. You can make Angerblader good with other cards, but it's much easier to make Sweeper Acrocanto good with other cards. And as another side tangent, I believe that Sweeper Acrocanto still existing in Angerblader is why Gaia is such a bad deck, because they're worried about, causing problems down the line. Without getting too deep into that, rather than tackling the problem at its core, for both Angerblader and Zazan, Bushiroad decided to hit consistency. If anything, it's similar to the Luard restriction, right? Rather than getting rid of that problem altogether, they simply made it less common. And this isn't the first time they've done this. Odysseus, Laurel, Refros, Calamity Tower, Cat Butler, I could go on and on and on. And attacking a deck's consistency is such a dumb move, because now when you lose to it 1 in 10 games, as opposed to 6 out of 10 games, it's going to feel even worse. Because instead of, oh, my opponent's playing some busted deck, I guess I lose, it's now, oh, my opponent drew his silver bullet, I guess I lose. It's just zero counterplay. Your opponent just drew it. Not, oh, I played into it, or oh, his deck has this. It's just, oh, he got lucky. It's worse to lose to luck than to lose because, oh, my opponent just had the better deck. Because that's a choice. You could have played that better deck. But anyway, Premium Collection 2 problems are still rampant. You've got Mohawk and Huang are still horrendously busted cards. Like, ask any proper competitive premium player and they'll tell you that these cards are problems. And while they probably don't need to be hit by the ban list, I think Mohawk and Huang existing are definitely design mistakes. But let's move on, because there's been another premium error recently, and that's been George. Now, as of the time of this recording, George has been confirmed to have an errata to be once per turn, so the infinite loop no longer exists. And I'm not going to spend too long talking about this, because when they mentioned this in the announcement on Tuesday, they did mention that George was always intended to be once per turn, and that the card of the day reveal was a mistake. So, at the very least, they did realise the issues that George would have caused. Or at least I hope. A cynical part of me considers that that could have just been a cover-up lie to stop us from shitting down Bushiroad's throat. But anyway, George being revealed as either not being once per turn was either some honest mistake or a random oversight, and human error is definitely forgivable. Anyway, I've spent the last however long, 10 minutes or so, talking about the failures of Bushiroad as a company, but now let's talk about the problems that the player base has. And to sum it up really nicely, a friend of mine, Chang, on Twitter, made the perfect statement, which is just stop settling. The average Vanguard player is allowing Bushiroad to get away with these failures by continuing to buy product. And the reason is, for most of the Vanguard player base, a broken game doesn't usually wind up affecting them. Like, Luard was the rare case where an actual tier 0 deck was causing problems for everyone as a whole. It was getting like 50% play rate at locals, it had an almost 80% play rate at the big event, and then, an even higher representation of top 8 cut. So, for context, every other time we've had a clear tier 0 deck in Vanguard, and in my opinion that's only ever been twice before this, both of those decks weren't being aggressively played to the point of ruining the game. Certainly we've never had a 70+% play rate. At least I've never seen it. So in a sense, Bushiroad gets away with bad game design, and then fixing it poorly afterwards, because the true extent of the damage never actually affects anyone. Like I said, the Luard ban list was stupid. The Zazan to 1 was stupid. But here's the thing. Now that Luard has been hit, the people that were just playing Shadows for an easy win will move on to back to Night Rose or Charlotte, which are now the new best decks in the game. Or people that were just playing Zazan just because have moved on and have banned it, despite Zazan still being a real threat. So these problems end up getting swept under the rug because, oh, we've fixed the problem. In a way, Bushiroad sates the competitive players by applying this low-effort, low-quality restriction just so that they can say, okay, we fixed the problem, you can stop complaining now. And people stop complaining, despite the fact that, no, you haven't actually fixed the problem. Like, Luard can still end the game on turn 3 really effectively. It's now just inconsistent about it. But you can't say that ending the game on turn 3 is good or healthy game design. Like, in a way, the cross is a problem too, because the cross also enables games to end on turn 3. But it's hard to justify a ban for the cross, because it's just the result of bad card design. Like, I could go on and on here about how in Vanguard, the majority of the competitive player base ends up being the ones generating these social media influence, like, for example, this channel, Solemn Vanguard, WCC, so on and so forth. And it's usually the less competitive players that take what we say, and, you know, they learn about these problems, and then they develop the opinions that we have on these problems. But that's neither here nor there, but it comes down to that these same players are the ones that are like, oh yeah, you know, if Luard was a problem and they've hit Luard, that means it's not a problem anymore, right? Despite Luard still being a problem. I don't want to spend too long complaining about the player base here, so I'm just going to cut it short and end it with this. Vanguard still has a lot of fundamental issues. Standard, more so than Premium, and I'm sure that a lot of competitive players share this sentiment. It almost makes us not want to play the game anymore, and that is, you know, honestly quite disappointing. Now, I'm going to say here, if you are fully casual, you don't care about being competitive, you don't care about the game being broken, you don't care about balance being warped, and all that stuff, then that's fine. Keep buying product, keep consuming, keep enjoying the game, and have fun. That's totally okay. I have nothing against you. The issue I have is with the people who consider themselves competitive, but then are willing to settle for the lowest possible action by Bushiroad. Like, as competitive players, as the ones who drive the health of the game, not the sales, the health of the game, we deserve better from Bushiroad. And here's the thing, we know that they can do better. Vanguard has been in many great spots before, and I'm sure that it will be in great spots again in the future. But the current spot we're in right now can't be further from that. All of these mistakes that Bushiroad have committed isn't good enough, and these horrible solutions aren't good enough. And too many people aren't voicing their opinion or taking action on it. Vanguard is flawed, and yet people are still consuming the product. So, like Chang says, stop settling, demand better. How you do that, whether you choose to vote with your wallet or just, you know, be much louder with your opinions, that's up to you. But Vanguard can definitely be a better game. We know it can be. So we should do what we can to tell Bushiroad that make your game better. I'm going to end it here before I punch a hole in my desk, but I will just say that just writing the script alone, not even recording it, was already making me kind of upset. And that's because I do like Vanguard. I want to see it be a better game. That's why I'm telling you that's why I've made this video, so that you guys can understand that, you know, here's my problems. Hopefully you can understand that it's a problem, and hopefully you can share my sentiment in that, you know, we need to hold Bushiroad responsible and, you know, do what we can to make them fix their game. But that's it. I can only hope that you watching this also wants the game to be better, and how you do that is up to you. But that's going to be it from me for today. As always, I've been Zistral with YellowCard Vanguard. If you've enjoyed this video, please leave us a like, subscribe to the channel, and keep up with all our socials in the description below. Once again, check out Strictly Broken TCG for all your Vanguard playsets and singles, using the code SBTCGYellowCard for discounts on playsets. And we'll be back very soon with some actual Vanguard content, so be sure to sub to the channel to see those. Thank you very much for watching, or listening, I guess, and we'll see you next time. Bye bye.